about 3 or so years ago. Um, and I was just working on my view here to see if I could get the view. There you go. That's what I'm looking for.
And we're live.
Yeah. Hey, hello everyone. I guess we're live, and this is a very exciting day because we're able to connect with all of you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation and to answering any questions that might come up. And uh, we're just ready to roll. So thank you for joining us. David.
Can you hear me?
I can. Yes.
Okay. I've got a question if there are other violinists on. I'm a music teacher at a performing arts school and been using Ned's instruments for a long time. And I think his bowed instruments actually sound better than acoustic instruments well amplified. And they have a sound that works really well because I combine them with the sound of horns. And so I've got a couple questions about use of violin. You were talking about frets before. I also, of the cellos I have a fretted cello. I don't know, Ned, are you going to continue to make the fretted cello?
Oh, absolutely. It's a favorite of mine. I love the fact that the cello, thing about a cello, and I remember this early on when I was first started working on cellos, and of course, I'm not a player myself, so I always get as much input from accomplished musicians as I can, and that I don't always listen to them, which is another potential problem. But but I'm always interested in what musicians have to say, and I do listen. But sometimes I have a vision that is not really consistent with some of the input that I get from musicians. So I have to, figure that out. But meanwhile, it was explained to me early on by a fine cellist that the cello is a great instrument because it's the scale length is such that it just fits the body. A human. You put your fingers down on the fingerboard, and you've got an interval between each of your fingers. Without having to stretch them or squeeze them. It's a very friendly instrument in that way, and putting the frets on makes it so accessible for so many different kinds of playing techniques, and also different stages in development. For example, as we've talked about before, you can make a fabulous bass out of a cello. You just get the right strings, E, A, D, G, you put them on there, and if it's fretted, then it's just very accessible to, especially to young people who are learning, people who are smaller, and they could play a great bass that fits their hands and so on. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question or just.
No, you did. I mean, the question was whether you'll continue to make a fretted cello, and what works well for me is I use a lot of double stop playing on the cello, and I can then use tablature for cellists, so they can actually, if they're having trouble with a passage, I can show them where to play it and so forth. Got a question about the violin, if there are other violins.
If I may say one more thing about the fretted bowed instruments, that is, I find very makes the fretted instrument that much more attractive, in that when you are bowing the instrument, the fact that it's fretted does not affect the tone very much. A little bit, but not so much, because the tone is dominated by the bow. The bow is so such a big factor in the sound that whether you're playing a fretless or fretted, it doesn't make that much difference. But when you play pizzicato with frets, now you have a whole nother world.
Yes.
A long sustain and all kinds of tonal and technique options. So I'm a big fan of fretted bowed instruments.
Right. And for those who haven't done it, a fretted cello, you can still get tremolo. You'd think that because it's being choked at the fret that wouldn't work, but if you play tremolo in the way you normally would on a cello, you'll still get it.
Well, I'm not sure 100% the same way you would, but it is accessible. One
Right.
other interesting thing, and one of the things I like to do when I'm speaking with musicians is to share some of the technical knowledge that I have about the instrument that musicians, often are not aware of, but which I hope can then be, a helpful tool in getting the most out of an instrument. And for example, if you take an upright bass with a 42-inch scale length and you put frets on it, you do start to really lose your ability to do vibrato, because that
Right.
little bit of wiggling on your finger, the longer the string is, the less effect it has. So a cello is a great balance. And of course, the frets on a violin, you can do all kinds of vibrato on that because the strings are shorter, and it's really affected by how you move your finger. But the longer the string, the less you're able to articulate a vibrato with frets.
Right. So, question I have for those that play violin. Here's one of my NS violins, and you've got the faux bout here. This, the plastic bout to give you the feel of the stop on the violin. The question that I have for the violinist, and I've done this with I'm not a violinist, I'm a guitarist, but with some of my other students, is your thumb will feel that position without the bout. And if you take the bout out, I would contend that you actually can play better in this position. The second question is, if the bout is off and you move your hand up to this second curvature and you use that as
Oh no, you're not allowed to do that. You can't do that. Forget
why?
it. We decide how you play the violin, and it has to follow those specific guidelines. Or we send someone over to your place, and could get ugly.
Yeah, you want to hear something ironic? I was once talking about this with Mark Wood, who's a great rock violinist and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Talk to him about moving beyond this point, even on his violin, so that you could play up here. And he said, "Oh no, you can never do that, and you couldn't do that." And I said, "Mark, you're the guy that plays like with your thumb on top and does all this crazy stuff, and you're telling me that I can't put my thumb here and play up here." Well, it's crazy.
It does point out how kind of unusual I am, in that most people who are involved in musical instrument design and production and sales and so on are musicians. So they have their own set of
rules,
criteria and rules that they live by, and all musicians do, and that's the way it should be and needs to be, and so on. But of course, in my case, I think it liberates me a little bit not to be a player myself. And so I'm ready for anything. And of course, it was violinists who told me that they needed to have that. I call it a bout. We call it a bout. And it wasn't my idea. Okay. But violinists said, "Oh, we need this." Okay. So I made it removable. Because I didn't want to, because to me, with an electric instrument, I'm always looking to figure out how to take advantage of the possibilities of an electric instrument that are not possible on acoustic. An acoustic, the whole reason you've got the bouts at near the neck on an acoustic violin is you need the top you need the volume inside and the size of the top, and it's all about tone. But that has nothing to do with a so-called solid body electric instrument. But people are used to that reference point, and who am I to say you don't need the reference point? So the demand was there, and we just we made it an option. So
right. Well, I hope to get you some videos at some point with people playing without it there to show how well they can play up high.
Most people leave it on, though. They do not take it off.
I know it's
part of
they're used to that feel, and they're used to that as a reference point. But your thumb is there. and then, as I said, if you then liberate yourself and you go to that next curvature on the violin, you can do some incredible playing of high,
Well,
So,
I'd love to see more people do that, but it is interesting how important it is for so many players to have that reference. And again, my job is to make the instrument work for the musician, that so a musician can be more relaxed, happier, have tone they like, and get creative without anything interfering with that process. That's the goal of my work.
right, right. Um, and speaking of tone, I'll just add one thing for those that have not worked with lots of bowed string instruments. The problem of putting everyone through a PA system or through the same speaker is that the violinist, who obviously has to adjust his intonation immediately on hearing himself, if he's coming through the speaker with another violin, he doesn't know which one is him. And I quickly learned that I use a small amplifier for each string instrument and either run a line or a mic on the amp to the PA system. And then somewhere, we have someone who's controlling the balance of the whole sound of the band. And the violinist, he's playing with trumpets and saxes and so forth, but he's got his amp right behind him, and hears that predominantly, and not that loud. I mean, I use small Fender amps, and they work really well. So it's a cello, by the way. I play through a Rumble 100. It's got an incredible sound through that amplifier, which has got a lot. You talk about space in the instrument. It's a very lightweight but very spacious amp, and I feel like they built it for, like to give you the sound of the wood and the space within it. And cello sounds amazing through it. So that's my 2 cents worth towards working with NS bowed instruments.
Thank you, David.
Good morning,
I
Ned.
just take a second out. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to welcome Haley Graves to our meeting. Thank you for joining us. Thanks everyone, but especially treat to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ned.
So you were saying, I interrupted, I apologize.
Yes, my name is Colbert Williams, Mr. Steinberger, and I'm a classical cellist. I've been playing for many, many years. And so I'm now entering into the world of, I ordered on order 2 electric cellos from your company. And so I want to approach this as much of a blank slate as possible. So one of my initial questions are, like, I'm ordering the bows. Are the bows used horsehair, or is it a different type of hair used on the bows for an electric cello?
No, it essentially, the bow is no different for an electric or an acoustic. And the strings are really no different either. So we're completely compatible with whatever your favorite bow is. And, it's interesting that horsehair remains, there's so many things where technology has advanced beyond what's available, in the sort of natural world or whatever. But it's interesting that nobody, I believe, makes synthetic bow hair to compete with a horse. So that's very traditional, really.
Okay. Now, are the strings similar to the strings that we use on an acoustic cello? Or are they completely different?
The strings are, we offer the strings for our cello, but any string will work on a cello, and there's no difference really in that part of it. If you could put any string you want on there, we make a 6-string cello and a 5-string cello.
Right.
And so when they're tuned to high E, then you need, a special string for that. That's not so readily available, but it's, we can help you with that and make sure you can have a string for that high E. And of course, the low F is also not conventional for a cello, but those are available as well.
Right. And one other question, on the back of the instrument, is it possible to have a LED indicator to tell us what the levels of the batteries are? So like, you know, if you're in the middle of a performance or playing that, you can know if the batteries need to be changed before you start a performance instead of being in the middle of it and they go out, or do you recommend changing them every time you do a performance?
Oh, I wouldn't recommend that because they, you know, it's batteries, of course, are kind of a necessary evil because they are not good for the environment. We should at least do our best to use them up and not replace them every time. I would say that the instrument will, and let me also say that your question there and concern and interest in having an indicator for the level of the batteries is, you're not alone in that. And actually we're working on some exciting new power systems that would include that kind of warning. But with the cello that you have now, what you want to do is you hear any distortion of any, you notice any kind of distortion, it doesn't seem to be sounding quite the way it should. That's when you change the batteries, because it's about overhead in the preamp. And so you want to make sure you have enough voltage so that there is no distortion in the sound. So it's not going to just go out on you like that. This sort of state where you might be able to hear it's not really giving you the sound, then definitely replace the batteries at that point.
Okay. Well, the cello hasn't been delivered yet, just to let you know. So okay. I ordered a 4 and a 6 string both. So
very exciting. 6-string cello is a very exciting instrument.
Right.
Challenging as well. So keep us posted as to how it works for you.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
And Mr. Wells, I thought you were having a question there and I interrupted you, so I apologize for that.
No problem, Ned. Good morning. Great to see you.
Great to see
I have actually 2 questions. One is, are there any plans for a fretted 6-string electric upright bass?
Well, I mean, the answer is no. Okay. But that doesn't mean never. Okay. So I mentioned earlier, actually, interestingly enough, that, you know, I have made fretted instruments with the full scale length. And actually, Corey suggested I bring the box bass forward just for fun. The box bass is an acoustic upright bass, which instead of having a conventional body, it has more like a speaker box with a top surface that is flexible along the lines of what and you know, all acoustic instruments are based on. And it's a fun instrument, actually. Tony Levin actually cut some tracks with it years ago. All experimental. I like to mess around with different crazy stuff, and it's not commercial. I thought I shut that off. Hang on a second. I will take care of this right now.
Well, thanks, Jerome, for asking the most difficult question.
Good morning, Corey. Great
Good morning.
to see you.
But again, the thing with a fretted upright is you have a limited amount of vibrato available when you have such a long, heavy string. That would be the downside for fretting it. But clearly, you know, if you build it right, the intonation would be on the money, and there are benefits. And we could do it. We haven't really had any demand, I would say. But on the other hand, so many of the things that we do, we don't have a demand up front. We just have a vision for, wow, wouldn't this be cool? Let's try this and let's see if, you know, we'll run it up the flagpole, and then musicians decide what they want, and we just try to respond to that.
Okay, so that sounds great and exciting. So there's like no prototype or plan for prototyping anytime in the near future.
Not at the moment, no. But
Okay.
you never
Well, what if-
know what the future will bring.
And is there anything that I could do to get the wheels on this in motion? Because this is an idea that I've been toying with for a little while.
Harassment, I think, is the way to do it.
Harassment, I'm good at harassment. Corey can attest to that.
So, yeah, if that's something you're really interested in, it's, you know, all these different variations, each one of them requires tooling and investment, you know.
Mhm.
The investment in, right now, we were able to do cellos, violins, you know, to fret them. We've never fretted a double bass. And I'm not sure how difficult that would be given our current technology that we're using, but I could look into it, and be fun to provide you with that. And it's also a way, you know, making unique instruments for players with whom we are closely affiliated and in communication with, and it's a learning process for us. So, you know, we make you a fretted upright bass and you go, you know what, I hate this thing. All right, we've learned something. Or, my God, this is really so fabulous. Look what you know, and you send a recording or whatever, and, you know, inspire us to pursue it further. It's all about making tools for making music. Whatever we can do that facilitates that. That's our. That's what we want to do.
Great. Last question here. I want you to tell me what this is. You can see it has the old knee rest hole, right?
That's a L2 bass. Yes.
The thing is, if we look at the front, there's a lot of XL about it. Like, for instance, the Allen screws here in the bridge, there aren't any. And it has the new or the early XL bridge things here.
Does it have screws on the front of the body
No,
or in the back?
It doesn't have the screws on the top of the body either.
It has the back screws.
Yeah, the only thing that's L about it is the peg hole leg rest.
No, that's also, yeah, right. So the screws are on the back. That's interesting. It's some kind of hybrid, whatever.
Yeah, I bought this in '86, and I was in Europe at the time when I got it. So I always thought that it was a Brooklyn-made L2 until I went looking for the serial number on one of the databases, and I couldn't find it. It's like a serial number was a 2221.
Well, that's an extremely unusual instrument. I don't really know exactly what the scoop is on it, frankly. But do you still have the leg rest?
No, the leg rest I lost somewhere along the way.
See, that's why we went with the new style leg rest.
Yeah.
And but you have something that is, you know, a piece of history, and it's you know, putting a more modern leg rest, the flip out leg rest that was what we went with, would be very practical, but it might diminish the value of the instrument.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is literally the best sounding bass I have ever owned and currently do own. This bass, you know, this is the one that is on the hits I played on.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, this is definitely the bass, and nothing that I've ever owned since and presently plays like this. This is the most remarkable instrument. This is the bass that I played at the NAMM show. No, at Frankfurt with Reeves.
With Reeves.
Yeah,
Are you still in touch with Reeves?
Still in touch with Reeves.
Say hi. Say hi for me, will you? It's been
Yeah.
way too long.
Yeah, we need to get him back onto real instruments.
Yeah. There's only one real instrument, right? Okay.
There you go. I mean, you can see that here.
No, but you know, one of the things I learned in my career, and of course I've had a long career in the musical instrument design, the work I do, and I realized, I was always striving to make something better, but I realized that better is a very subjective term, and there's nothing quite like a Fender P bass. Sorry, I get that, and so that's the world we live in, and it's all good. I'm a big fan of Leo Fender, and it's just so amazing to me that his designs from 70 years ago are still the coolest thing going. You gotta give the guy some credit. Really fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
I mean, like you, Ned, he got it right the first time. You know, your initial, your L basses, which weren't the absolute first design of the basses. I mean, I know about the early prototypes and the one that was recently on sale somewhere.
Oh, you mean the one with the tuning machines sticking out, the conventional tuning machines? Sure. No, it's an evolution, right?
Yeah, but still, the fundamental concepts that design was based on, those carry through straight to today, even in the radius.
Well, you know what is fun for me is there is a renaissance of interest in headless basses and guitars.
Yeah.
It's quite remarkable. It makes me I'm very happy to see these folks, Kiesel, and it's Ibanez, and all kinds of people are jumping on the bandwagon, and that's because there's a reason for headless. It's not, and when I first got started, trying to, put some kind of, to take these design ideas and bring them to musicians. As I said earlier, I was looking to license the design, and there was very little interest in that. But again, it was what kept me going was the gleam that I could see in some bassists' eyes when they got a hold of that bass and they went, "Oh, that's pretty interesting. Let me check that out further." That's because in the business, it was like, forget it, weird stuff. Nobody wants weird stuff. But I believe the reason that bass was able to transcend those kind of prejudices, if I could say, was that there was some meat to it. It wasn't just some crazy thing. It was logical. A player who was open-minded could say, "Okay, I get it." Anyway, thank you for your support over all these years. This is what has made this all possible.
Well, thank you, Ned, and thank the team, Corey, Ashley, especially Ashley.
Ashley, okay, God bless. That's wonderful. I mean, I'm not sure where Ashley comes into it. She's our bookkeeper. She's wonderful, though. I'm totally all about Ashley, and we have a great team these days. It's I've had times in the past when the team wasn't coming together, and but right now we just have a wonderful team, and we're getting the job done.
Well, thanks goodness, because like you said, I've been along for the ride for a while now. I mean, from Brooklyn all the way through Nashville and everything in between, and now Maine.
So you know the whole sordid story. Oh my
Dude,
God.
I
Uh,
have a bit of the sordid story right here. This is my pride and joy right here. I have to switch cameras if I can for this. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, wow.
That's my pride and joy right
just
there.
turned red. Okay, great.
Yeah,
No, beautiful.
yeah. Now I was told that there were 5 of these made in the Newburgh facility. Is that true?
It's a bold-faced lie.
Okay.
No, I have no idea. I have no idea whatsoever at this point. I don't have a great memory. There's not a nut or bolt that I can't remember, and but when it comes to what color we painted different instruments, I can't remember that. It looks like it's playing well, though. Good for
Yeah,
you.
it plays very well. On the forums, it comes up in discussions sometimes there. And yeah, the legend is there were 5 made, there are 3 accounted for. This one is the one in best condition. So,
You know what's cool? That instrument is actually worth a good bit of money, right?
Yeah, this is
And
my
you know, just the idea that these things retain their value, that people appreciate them. It's just so just really great. And I'm glad you've got those instruments with you.
so am I. So
Jerome,
am
I think I can get you a leg rest from Ned's workshop, but I want the red one.
Okay.
Leg rest, what's it worth? What's it worth to you?
Hey, Haley, I think you had a question, correct?
Hi, how are you guys? So I'm Haley. I'm originally from Maine, moved to Seattle about 2 years ago. And I just had a question for Ned. Are you thinking about making some electric guitars again? Because I'm kind of interested in investing in an NS electric guitar.
Well, funny you should ask that question. And that question has been coming up a lot. And yes, I do want to make an NS electric guitar. You know, we did a lot of work on that some years ago. And for various reasons, you know, exacerbated by the pandemic, we haven't brought it out really. We made a dozen or so prototypes, which were extremely well appreciated.
I think I played one of your prototypes at one point.
I wouldn't be surprised. But one thing that happened along the way on that project is that a lot of energy was oriented towards, you know, developing the tremolo for that guitar, because, you know, obviously, and going back to the beginning of my career in guitars, I started with bass and then we came out with a guitar in 1983, I think. And by the way, we felt a lot of pressure to come up with a guitar because we were there was a lot of popularity with the headless bass. And the next thing I knew, there was this company in Japan that was making headless guitars that were based on the design of our bass, you know, which were kind of a bizarre kind of copy of the bass and made it into a guitar. It wasn't really very well done, but it definitely got my attention. And so we started building guitars, and then the next thing you know, you know, everybody wanted to have a tremolo, and that's what led to the development of the trans trem, because people wanted a tremolo. And so suffice to say, with a guitar that took a bit of a hiatus for a variety of reasons on bringing that forward. And, you know, it's also, you know, for a company like NS Design, we are not a big company. We have limited resources. The guitar is particularly challenging with the investment in the tooling and so on. So, you know, business decisions need to be made, and it needs to be viable. But I think as things are evolving, it's time for us to get that guitar going. So we can dedicate the first, we'll call it the Haley model, okay? Thanks to your the
Andy's comment.
pressure you're putting on. So we're working on it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Auto trim tuners. This is kind of for Corey and other people too. Your auto trim tuners. You know, I work in public education. We buy a lot of things through Sweetwater, and when you, I have auto trim tuners on all my guitars. As a guitarist, I can't tell you how many times I've stabbed myself with sharp ends of strings, and then also had, you know, gig
It's a
bag.
good thing you're not a hemophiliac.
Yes, I actually had one wound that was so bad I actually had to have a surgeon close it up.
Really? Oh, jeez.
Yes, and so your
But
auto.
did you sue, you know, the manufacturer, or you let it?
No. So, but anyway, I mean, it's an amazing product. When you go on Sweetwater and you look at, okay, say you know, someone wants to put, I'm going to put Grovers or Shalers on my guitar. Your auto trim tuners are relatively very inexpensive. They, for those that don't know, you put the string in, you tighten the back, and you start to tune it up, and it cuts the string for you and has no sharp edges sticking out. And I just feel that you guys through social media should get the word out. You should have a video about it. You should have, you know, I mean, guitar has to deal with changing strings all the time. You can change your strings twice as fast with auto trim tuners. And it's and I think you sell them for about $60 or $70 for a full set.
I don't sell them. You know, this is a product that is that I designed for the D'Addario company.
Right.
And who are some of my very favorite people.
Yeah, I work with them too.
They have kept that, made that available over all these years, even though it's not something that has caught on a great to a great scale. But still, there are folks like you who appreciate the tuners, and they are fun. I still, to this very day, when I go to, I use the auto trims, and I put the string in, and I turn the key, and it, you know, it cuts the string. I laugh every time. It's just fun. And so anyway, that's something I designed for D'Addario. It is available. It's not that cheap, unfortunately. There is a bit of a premium that, you know, you can buy tuners for a lot less than $60 a set. Okay. But I think it's a great product, and there is, you know, a loyal following for that, but it was never a big hit.
In terms of spreading the word, I mean, I know the D'Addario people too. I mean, they
I know you
support
do.
me.
Yes.
And I mean, should I talk to Suzanne? Should I talk to Jim? I mean, somebody should. I mean, with social media now, you have a video that says the best machine.
All of the above, David. Really, if you have the energy to push, not push it, but, you know, to pursue that a little bit more and check in with your friends at D'Addario. It is this very steady product, though. It never was a big seller, but the demand continues. So, and maybe someday, a lot of it has to do, frankly, with if a more, and see, here's the reality. For a manufacturer of musical instruments, you can buy tuners amazingly cheap. So now you're going to add cost to your manufacturing cost by buying auto trim tuners. People have been reluctant to step up to the plate because they're just very cost oriented, and that's the way it is. So nevertheless, they are fun, and they are appreciated, and who knows what the future will bring, and anything you can do to bring more of those to the public with your personal contacts with the Dario, that's terrific.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think we've got some metal folks here. We got John Benucci from the band Overlord, who's got a nice array of NS instruments, and Avend from Discord. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I was a bit late into the meeting because of work. So it's in Norway. We're 5:30 here in the evening. But thanks for letting me.
John, do you have a
For
question?
joining us.
John Benucci, did you have a question for Ned? I know we were talking before we started the live stream.
There you go. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
You're loud and clear.
The conversation before, you kind of answered everything that I needed to know. I will say this about the stand-up bass. Playing with a bunch of combat vets that had a blues band, awesome guys, and the stand-up bass just fit right in with the keyboards. I mean, you didn't lose. Sometimes when you play with a keyboard, especially doing the metal, you lose your bottom end because the keyboard is lower, you know. But with the stand-up bass, with the blues band, it filled up everything so nice, you know.
Right.
It just sounds so good. And I destroyed my bow.
All right. Well, you need a rehair, my friend. Okay.
You need a rehair. I need metal on it.
You want to. So, well, I'm glad that it worked out for you. You know, I actually, I don't know if you see this back here. Let's see if I can, you know, this. I brought this down from the attic. I have all kinds of stuff stored in the attic. You know, above the shop here.
It's your monolith.
It's a monolith. And so this, you notice that, okay, so here you see a 6-string double bass. Okay, let's see if I can, and then this is Headless 6-string double bass. There you see the head area there. So this is very different than the double bass that you have. And that's a good thing, because this experiment, and this is I bring it up a little because it gives me an opportunity to talk about the way I work. This, and let me see if I can, let me actually check this off here. Okay. So this it goes on a stand like what we came up, like the product that we now offer, right? This is way before, this has got to be 25 years old now, this mock-up. It was never intended to be an instrument. It was just a way to check out some ideas, okay?
So how come you didn't go with the Headless?
Because it made no sense. Great question. And that's what I realized. In other words, this was a great learning experience for me, because acoustic guitars, okay, acoustic basses, there's the body is a very important part of the sound production, and putting heavy tuning machinery on the body is not cool. It diminishes the acoustic response. But with an electric, of course, it's different, and and that was part of the original concept of putting the tuners on the body. Is, again, it was for the bass, it was about balance for the bass guitar. That was the driving force behind this exploration of a headless instrument. And with a solid body instrument, having extra mass on the body only helps to drive the sound. It's all good. But on an acoustic instrument, it's a completely different world. That's why acoustic instruments have headstocks. They don't have the tuning on the body, because the acoustic top and everything really needs to be able to respond, and you don't want that weight on there. So anyway, the reason I pulled this out for discussion, was just to talk a little bit about the design process. So what I do in my work is I build a mock-up first. It's not, you're never going to play it. It's a way to check out all the dimensions, the structure, and the position of things. And with this particular mock-up, I learned so much from it, and I learned that those ideas and improvements that I could make on an electric bass guitar because of the improved balance of the headless design and, just create something more fun to play. I sort of pursued that without thinking into the acoustic bass, or, the upright bass. It's not acoustic, but, the long scale upright. And I realized that I was doing exactly what I don't want to do, which is following a preconceived notion of what the instrument should be. So I was into headless basses. Now I want to make an upright bass, and so I'm into headless. But the reasons for headless on an upright were not there. So it took me a little while to figure it out, and I realized that this mock-up I made was not where I wanted to go, because it really did not make as much sense as an instrument with, if you're playing the upright bass, it's very convenient to tune at the head, and tuning machines are readily available. And so that was a kind of a turning point for me in trying to understand that headless is not, it's not all about headless. It's about performance, about making the instrument work optimally. And so this mock-up I made was a great vehicle for me to realize that is not where I want to go. And that's what mock-ups are for. That's, an experiment.
I don't know. I'd try to play it.
Well, this guy has no strings on it, so it's going to be difficult. All right, but
I did notice though on the new bass that there is no place. I have to use double ball end. And my problem over the years, and this goes way back.
no, the new bass does not have double ball end. No.
That's right. It goes in the bottom. I haven't changed them yet. You're right. You're right.
No, and it's a self-clamping system. Very cool, actually.
Right. And the original one I had it because I was playing metal. I was popping strings like crazy with the double ball ends that you guys used to have.
No, which strings were you breaking?
Mostly the E and the A.
Really?
Well, I play.
Man, you are aggressive, huh? Whatever. I don't know.
That's why I leave them there, and I had somebody make the head nuts for me to keep the strings up there instead of using the double ball end.
And you have less breakage?
Hardly ever. Now when I break it down near the bottom.
I think you might have had some faulty string. I don't know. I've never heard that before. Strings breaking with a double ball.
I used to break strings all the time on every bass I have ever had, including my P bass that I still have.
Well, it reminds me of a little vignette or whatever. And boy, I'm not so good on names, and I can't remember this guy's name, but he was a serious bass player who early on. And I said, well, the tuning system is really, very, very stable on the Steinberger, bass, and that's cool and everything. He said, well, when I bend strings, I detune them no matter what. And I said, you're not going to detune a double ball end string, when you if you're bending or whatever. But see, these are all learning experiences. Next thing he does, he bends the living daylights out of this string, and sure enough, it detuned a little bit. So whatever. There are limitations to the technology, and we just try to make it as good as the best that we can. And certainly tuning stability is very important. And the double ball strings tend to be pretty good in that department. And
Well, I have double ball on the I got a Spirit guitar over there, and they stay in tune all the time too. But you know, you play guitar a little different than bass. But I will say since that's why I'm on my fourth set of frets. It's just I play very aggressive. But I tell you what, with the roto sounds, the roto sounds and the original Steinberger, there is nothing that sounds like it. The sustain, and
you're talking about with the thin core when it passes over the bridge, right?
oh my God, this, you know, the original, and with the roto sounds, the sound, the brilliance, and it stays in tune. Like I'll pick it up. I'll pick it up after not touching it for 2 or 3 days. It'll still be in tune. You know, it's just incredible the way the original design. It's awesome. It's awesome, bro.
Well, thank you so much. I really
You did good. You did good from the 80s. You know what I'm saying?
It's been downhill ever since, but I'm still working it.
Well, obviously not. I've got just about everything. You know. We'll see.
Wow.
We'll see about a cello soon, though.
Let's
fun, very
let's
fun.
check in with Avend, the other side of metal, on the other side of the globe.
There you go.
Yes, thanks. I was wondering if I could ask you this, Ned, because I know you're not a traditionalist, and neither am I. But have you ever thought of or experimented with an upright bass like the Omni with a lower string than the B, so down to low F sharp, for instance? Because I think playing that with a bow, it would be absolutely a monstrous sound, and it would be very interesting to try, but I've never been able to find any strings that I could fit on it. So,
we're talking about a cello here.
I'm talking about no, not a cello, a bass.
No, a bass.
So I play the Omni bass, 5-string version.
Well, B is awfully low note, okay, and I guess you know, a grand piano goes down to A, right, which is extremely low. It's up to you guys as musicians to experiment, and it's there. The lowest notes like that are challenging. Okay, you know, there's a reason why the A string on a grand piano is 13 feet long. Okay.
Yeah, I know, but
very long. Okay, so my point there is that articulation on that lower string is a challenge. I mean, it's those low note and the string construction. You know, as the strings are really the most important thing on your instrument, on a string instrument. What, you know, you can make it with a headstock or headless. You can do whatever you want, whatever pickups you want. The dominating, you know, the pickup is the tone generator. Excuse me, the string is the tone generator. Okay, the string. So lower than a B string, it's pushing the technology, and also, you know, it's pushing the our capacity to hear, right? Because 30 cycles is a B string is like 30 cycles. You go below that, I mean, it is below normal hearing range. Of course, there's a harmonic structure, so you get to hear the harmonics and they define the tone, but also the lower that string is, the bigger the diameter has to be in order to have the tension you need to play it. And those bigger diameter strings have very limited ability to generate higher harmonics. So I'd say in practical terms, not to be a downer, but it's a tall order to make that work. So I'm all for a challenge, don't get me wrong. But
yeah, that other one is actually, yeah, it only adjusts
Yeah, because for my bass guitars that I don't play with the bow, I tend to use lower strings, and it works surprisingly well for a 34-inch scale. I have, for instance, a 166 on my Warwick thumb, and it really works well.
What you're saying is 0.166 inches in diameter of the string?
Yeah.
And you're getting a good result, and you're tuning it to?
I've tuned that one to a G. So, and that works very well. But of course, I would really love to try out bowing, something like that. But finding strings and someone that makes that kind of strings is not that easy.
Yeah, if I could pipe up a second. How you doing, Ned? Hey,
And thank you for your for filling in here where I'm not able to answer the question. So,
well, I mean, strings in the 34-inch scale do exist for the sort of tuning he's talking about. We've done a lot of searching for cool new strings to use with the Omni bass, because the clientele I deal with, they call her music, often want to do bowing and things on these strings. But yeah, those strings are generally, obviously they're for electric bass guitar. And while they might fit the instrument, they probably don't bow very well. And that's, I think, where you're probably running into some issues, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, they do make strings that tune to a low F. I mean, the metal guys know, with all these extended strings, 7-string basses, 8-string basses, crazy instruments for electric bass. But yeah, the Omni, you'd want to hopefully be able to bow it.
really, folks are playing the low F. Man, that's low. Jeez.
Quite a lot of people do, actually. So it's getting more common, I think.
Yeah,
But you're talking about not an F. I mean,
Below the low B, yeah.
Oh my God!
It's ridiculously low.
If anybody could send me a recording of an instrument like that, I would be very interested to check it out. It seems sort of, for me, it's a little beyond. I mean, just really pushing it. But that's great, and I'm interested in learning more about it.
Yeah, Ned, I think Avid would be a great a candidate for that 7-string fretted fan fret Omni bass you were talking about a while ago.
Oh no, it's ready. It's ready, and I'll be shipping it tomorrow. Yeah.
Great. I'll be waiting.
Don't hold your breath. Okay. Anyway.
Can I ask a question of the bass players? Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
When one plays an upright bass and bows it, obviously you have the side of the bass leaning against your body for stability. And so when I have my student bass players playing the NS upright bass, obviously it's on a tripod, and when you put it up high, it's too difficult to keep it from wobbling. So what I do is I have them play on a short stool, kind of like a classical bass. Many classical bass players play on stools and so forth. And so by reducing the length of the pole and getting down closer to the tripod, and they're playing sitting down, it keeps the instrument more stable. I'm curious, you've got about 3 or 4 bass players here who play your upright bass, and I'm curious if they play it standing up and how they deal with that issue of movement on a tall, pole coming off of a tripod.
Great question.
I'm probably not a good candidate to answer that one, because you saw what I did to my bow. So I don't bow very well. So I pluck them very good though. So
right. How about
and yeah, leaning it, sitting on a stool is good because you can really get into it better. You can really grab onto it, and you have, like you said, it's not moving around so much. But standing up is good too. So, I like to stand up if I'm doing harmonies or whatever.
Right. How about Ivan?
Yeah.
Is that from Norway?
Yes. So this is something that I've experienced as well, and I usually play mine standing up. And of course, the Omni bass is a little bit shorter than the full scale bass, so maybe that helps. But what I typically do is I stand on the tripod. So I put my foot on the tripod. I make it as flat as I can, and I stand on it so it doesn't jump around so much.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Well, I could say this, that, you know, life is full of compromises, and I would love to make the stand stiffer, but it's really, if it's going to be portable, it's, you make it as stiff as you can, and that's what it is right now. But I understand the issue, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Jerome, you had a comment on that, and you've played a myriad of our upright basses, so please chime in.
Yeah, and for about more than 25 years, I played the double basses, the 42-inch scale basses. I played them standing, bowing. And the one thing that I think was vital in making that really work was I always did and still do use the heavy duty tripod stands rather than the standard tripod stands that come with the wave bases. I know Corey and Ned remember the story of how and why I came upon needing the tripod, the heavy duty tripod stand. So that makes a big difference. The heavy duty tripod stand does not wobble. And I've also on occasion taken to standing, putting a foot on the tripod stand because it's comfortable. And, again, those stands are like super stable. Now, the last 2 years here, I've started playing seated because I'm doing a lot of recording sessions. I'm playing a lot here in the studio. And standing just isn't always the most comfortable thing to do, when it's a long session. So I've gotten used to bowing in a seated position as well. And that works out very nicely with both stands. So yeah, the bottom line here for me is that the heavy duty tripod stand that ships with the CR bases is the way to go if you're going to stand and play arco. That's definitely it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, this has been quite the session.
I have a question on the heavy duty tripod stands.
Haley?
What? Okay. There's a lot of people like kind of chiming in all at once there. My computer just like took it, and I can tell if you were calling on me. Hey, so I just had a question about the basses. So I'm a guitarist more than a bass player. I can play bass, but I just was curious for like the punk genre. How do you feel like about basses in NS? Like in the tone they give off? Like, do you think it's something that could be used more often in punk, would you say? Or do you feel like
it's up to the artist, really. That it's the thing, it's about finding some kind of means of expression that is attractive and that inspires people. When I first made upright basses, I was very excited about the string length. That's what really motivated me to get going on it, because the longer the string, the more harmonics you can pull out of it. And again, that's why a grand piano has a 13-foot string. Of course, you cannot play with frets a 13-foot string. It's absolutely out of the question. But the upright bass has this dimension to it where you can exploit the longer strings. And when I first made upright basses, and it's funny because I got a lot of feedback from bassists, people who were upright players, and I tended to get a very consistent kind of recommendation for me that make it as much like an acoustic upright as possible. And but that was never really what I wanted to do. I wanted to explore what you could do with an electric upright that would be fun and musical and beneficial for an artist. So the thing is that those long strings are capable of generating very intense higher harmonics. And I started out with round wound strings on the upright basses that I made, which is completely crazy, right? Nobody plays an upright bass with round wound strings,
Right.
but you would not believe the tone we got out. I mean, you take, the difference between a flat wound string and a round wound string. It's like the flat wounds are kind of, muted and they have limited higher frequency response and limited harmonics. And then you put the round wound strings on your bass guitar, and all of a sudden it's got all this energy and brilliance.
I love
Take those same round wound strings and make them 42 inches long. It's like so intense, you can't believe it, and so much fun. And Rob Wasserman was working with me then. God rest, may he rest in peace at this point. Sad to say, he's not with us anymore, but he made some great records with the long scale round wound strings. But of course, that's not where most upright bass players want to go. And, the round wound strings that we have are collecting dust. But still, that gives you a little idea where I was coming from on that. And, I think that an upright bass is potentially a very intense instrument, for all kinds of music. And if you're interested in really taking it all the way, those round wound strings, in terms of having a modern sound and having a new exploration of tonality and music, they've got, it's a great sound.
Yeah. I got some friends, King Youngblood. I don't know if Corey showed you their videos, but they are using, I think they're using an NS cello in it, and they're a punk band here in Seattle.
Great.
And, they were using that for a while, and I just felt like it really brought out like the tone in their music more. Like it brought out tonality a lot. It was super cool.
Well, hey, the sky's the limit. It's about providing tools. I don't have a lot of people who design and build musical instruments are players, of course. Most people are, and they have a kind of a sound in their mind that they're trying to create, that they can share, and that's all great. But the instruments that I make are all about exploring the unknown, and that's I enjoy that. And when I hear that somebody is taking, sort of crossing genres or whatever and experimenting and creating new experiences as musicians for themselves and for their audience, that's music to my ears, for lack of a better expression.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Hello.
Comment?
We have Haruto from Japan who is asking about composite materials, Ned, and maybe you could speak about some of the new developments we have at NS Design with the just rich light fingerboards and the other co-form, things like that.
Okay, well, traditional fingerboard materials are, ebony and rosewood, of course, and which is great. But right now, the concerns about the ecology and so on, and the availability of these exotic woods is under stress, and we have developed other alternatives to that. The one that, Richlight, of course, is a great product developed by the Richlight company that we use, and it is a very high quality alternative to ebony, and we find it works extremely well. We also have developed this whole kind of new technology of co-form, so that the fingerboard on a bowed instrument is highly curved, much more than a plucked instrument. So there's a lot of wasted material that goes into making a traditional fingerboard, let's say for a bass. I mean, it's a big fingerboard. Is really kind of you end up, you know, making most of the ebony into sawdust, and you know, it's not that efficient. So we have developed this co-form technology where we take modern polymers and actually form them to the fingerboard, and so it's a thinner layer of, you know, the fingerboard itself needs to be hard and durable, and so we put this cover basically on the conventional maple neck, and the material that we're using is extremely hard, very durable, and very efficient use of the materials. So we take a lot of pride in that, and it's one of the bigger leaps that we've taken at NS is to develop this technology, because you know, whenever you develop a new technology, a new system for making things, you take some risk, okay? Because nothing can be perfectly vetted, you know. So if you do it the same old way they've been doing it for hundreds of years, then you know where you are. If you've got something new that you're doing that hasn't been done before, then you could wake up the next morning and find out why nobody ever did it, you know. So, but we're able to take this co-form technology and really make it work. We've had near zero problems with it, and it's a very exciting way to make musical instrument, to make a bowed instrument with this technology. So I don't know if whose question I'm answering. I guess this was
it was Haruto from Japan. Oh, he's right there. Go ahead, Haruto.
Thanks, Ned. This is how to. Thanks for answering. That's perfect.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Did I answer your question adequately?
Yes, and actually, I was wondering why you don't use the carbon fiber. I mean, Steinberger brand. You invented in 1970s at this point, and it looks you are shifting towards the wood material, conventional wood materials these days. So that was my initial question.
Sure, a very good question. You know, there's a great deal to recommend carbon fiber materials in musical instruments, and I continue to work with carbon fiber. And these days, what's very exciting is that they actually can 3D print continuous carbon fiber. And you know, that's very significant when I say continuous, because to make the fiber really effective, you have to have long strands of it, the length of the neck or whatever. Just like a tree has fibers that go up the length of the trunk, those fibers you need to be continuous with carbon fiber as well. And so there's a lot of new technology there to offer us more opportunities to create carbon fiber instruments. However, wood is also an extremely good material to use for making a musical instrument. It is similar to carbon fiber, and it has continuous fibers throughout the length of the material. And people love wood. You know, I have so many times I've had this experience, you know, where I've built a musical instrument of a new design and then decided, well, let's put a really nice piece of figured maple on it or whatever, and you know, make it more beautiful. And people are just overwhelmed by that, the figured wood and so on, and they lose track of everything else. So I want to make instruments that people enjoy playing, they're comfortable with, that they love. And wood and carbon fiber are both very suitable for that. And especially with the bowed instruments where there's this strong traditional element, the wood has really worked out very well. And we do reinforce the necks with carbon fiber for performance purposes, but the overall feel of a wooden instrument is something that I personally enjoy, and the players who use the instruments enjoy. So that's why we do both.
Thanks, Ned.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment for Haley?
Sure.
Yeah. Haley, you mentioned about learning to play the bass guitar, which I also teach. And one of the things you should not be afraid to do if you're playing punk is play with a good pick. And people will try to put you down for that, but look up Carol Kaye, K-A-Y-E. Carol was a guitarist who one day in the studio, the bass player didn't show up and she played a Fender bass. She's now in her 80s. If you send her an email, she'll probably email you back. She has some great books on how to play bass guitar with a pick, and you can get some really funky rhythms because of the down up stroke, you know, of a pick. And if someone ever tries to put you down, oh, you play bass with a pick, just say, look up Carol Kaye. I mean, she's on all kinds of famous hits, you know, Beach Boy hits. And
I know Haley well enough. She's not going to let anybody put her down for whatever she does. She's going to go for it. So but it's good advice, but definitely good advice.
But I'd say, you know, get an NS bass guitar, and you'll find it's easy enough to play like a guitar and actually finger like a guitar. So that's my advice.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that a lot. Yeah, I definitely know I want to at some point just invest in like an NS instrument, because I know Corey and Ned very well too. So it just kind of makes sense. But yes, I'm a big stickler for playing with one of these with bass, and it makes Corey very mad, but you know, he tried to get me out of that habit, but it happens.
So what you don't know is that Corey has been instrumental in teaching Haley a lot of the music that I
forgot that I didn't say that in the open chat. My apologies.
Not at all. But anyway, Corey's a great teacher. So many people have benefited from his tutelage.
Thank you, Ned. We had a question about the angle after the bridge on the cello and upright basses and omni basses, and how that is quite a bit more severe than a traditional acoustic instrument. Any comments?
Well, I'm not convinced that that's actually true. I have to look at that more carefully. Certainly, the angle over the bridge is what we're talking about, right? The break angle over the bridge. Did I get that right? Okay. So I would say that tends to be less significant than people tend to think. It's very important that, and by the way, it doesn't always have to be down. I've made a lot of instruments where it went sideways at the bridge. The point is that you have to connect the string to the bridge so that whatever the vibration range of the string, it never starts flopping around. It has to be intimately connected to the bridge to get optimal tone. So whatever that angle is required, if your angle was just 1 degree, you'd pluck the string and it'd start rattling around on the bridge, and that would be a complete disaster. So, you know, you need probably a minimum of 10-degree angle there to really be securely connected to the bridge. And then
what about coming out of the body or the tailpiece? That's a pretty severe angle too, right? Does that have any effect?
As far as what comes off the body is pretty much irrelevant. What matters is the break angle over the bridge. You know, you've got a bridge. I happen to have a bridge here. String comes over this way, and then it has an angle down that way. All right. That angle has to be sufficient to hold a string intimately to the bridge. More than that angle is not really particularly desirable. And I I'd be curious to pursue the question further with the individual who asked, where their feeling is that the angle is more severe on our instruments. I don't think it is. It's certainly not intended to be. You don't want more angle than you need.
Yeah, it was from Andrew Sisko. If he wants to chime in and be more specific, it was really about the angle going through the tailpiece. I misinterpreted his question.
Hi, Ned. This is Andrew. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Oh, great. Good to speak with you. I was referring to the as the strings on the cello and the NS bass that I used to own go through the body at the bottom of the instrument to accommodate the shortened length of the instrument without a conventional tailpiece. It goes back and it anchors into the rear of the instrument. I just noticed that angle is just a sharp angle as it comes up through the top of the body, and not a more gradual curved. It's as if the balls of the ends of the string aren't really holding much tension. It's all at the crease or the break angle as it comes off the top of the body, and that concerns me for string longevity, really.
So have you had I'm curious, have you had strings breaking there or anything like that?
No, I guess I'm just being fiddly, but it just seems
no, these are all good questions. Don't misunderstand me, but that's what I asked. That's the key question.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay. Cello strings are made, have a pretty long tail on them, or for lack of a better word, because there's a lot of distance between the bridge and the tailpiece. So if you want to make an electric cello, you could say, well, we don't need all that length, so let's make a geometry that doesn't require that length, and then you have to make custom strings to fit it. But that's undesirable to have custom strings. I mean, at a certain point, it can be worth it if you get enough benefit from it. But if you can find another way to do it that really works fine, and you don't need custom strings, that's got a lot going for it. So that's where the design of the cello comes from. It goes through the body primarily to accommodate the current string design that works for an acoustic instrument. And as far as that sharp bending angle, as long as the string is not breaking at that point, that's fine. It really is not an issue. It's interesting to note, for example, the Omni bass is exactly the opposite, because the Omni bass is designed to be able to use conventional bass guitar strings. So kept that distance very short beyond the bridge, similar to an electric guitar, so that customers, players, would be able to choose whatever kind of a bass guitar string they want. I don't know if that answers your question fully.
Thanks, Ned.
Great.
All right. Well, we've had quite an assemblage of folks from around the world. This is fantastic. It's great to see everyone from Europe, Spain, Japan, Australia. This is fantastic.
Really is. I so appreciate all of you taking the time to check in, and it's a new world we're living in now, and we communicate in new ways, and let's keep it going.
Happy customer.
All the unhappy customers were weeded out of the conversation. It's kind of brutal, right. But whatever.
No, really.
We vetted them.
Just got this one 2 weeks ago, and it's great.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Wolf, and hello to Germany.
Hi, guys.
Well, let's plan on doing this again. Let's try next month or soon.
Okay, great. Thank you all so much. It's so good to be with you. And, you guys are what it's all about in terms of the work I do, that's for sure. And it's always a learning experience for me to be in closer contact. So this is a great new way to continue the dialogue.
Thank you, Ned.
Well, I guess we're ready to say till next time, and have a great weekend, weekend, whatever. And thank you all for joining us.